Hi, I'm Cora, and my own mom locked me out of the house, saying I had no home anymore. But that was just the beginning. I found out my mom had been lying to me for years, stealing my inheritance, and selling my house without my knowledge. Then, the bank called. Mafia boss, we're ready. I'm not just fighting for what's mine, I'm fighting for the truth. And the worst part? I have no idea who to trust anymore. The battle isn't over. And the real enemy? They're still out there. The morning was cold, even for Portland, Oregon. The gray sky hung heavy over the city, matching my mood as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a half-empty cup of coffee. It was the kind of morning that didn't demand much of me, a quiet reprieve before the grind of the day. The apartment was small, barely more than a single room and a bathroom, but it was mine. It had been my sanctuary, the place where I could be alone after long hours of work, after playing the part of the responsible daughter. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders, the morning chill nipping at my skin as I glanced at the clock. Another day at the office, another long commute. I could already feel the weight of the day pressing down on me. I was the reliable one, the one who always came through for my family, financially, emotionally, in every way possible. But it was a role that no one appreciated. Certainly not my mother, Marianne. I had always been the one to hold everything together, to clean up the messes others left behind. And yet, it always felt like my efforts were invisible to them. Amanda, my younger sister, was the favored one, the one everyone adored. She could do no wrong in our mother's eyes. And I was the one left in the shadows, silently supporting them all while they turned a blind eye. I sighed, pushing the thought from my mind. It was a story I knew all too well. I had made peace with it, or so I thought. There was no point in getting angry about things that would never change. I had a job to do, bills to pay, and life to live. But today, something felt different. There was a strange knot in my stomach as I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting another work email or a message from a friend, but instead, it was a text from my mother. We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stopped in my tracks, my hand frozen midair. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. My breath caught in my chest, and I couldn't move. I blinked, willing the words to change, to make sense. But they didn't. The betrayal was instant, flooding my body with a sharp, sickening wave of emotion. It was as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. I felt cold, detached, as though I were looking at myself from the outside, trying to make sense of a life that suddenly no longer seemed familiar. I had worked for everything. I had built this life from nothing. Every dollar I earned, every hour I spent away from the family, it was all for them. But this was too much. This wasn't just a petty argument or a misunderstanding. This was a declaration of war, and I was being kicked to the curb like a stranger. The disbelief quickly turned to anger. How dare she? How dare my own mother treat me like this? All these years of sacrifice, all the emotional labor, the financial support, and this is how it ended. With a message. With no explanation. No conversation. Just this. I wanted to call her, yell, scream at her, but I didn't. I couldn't. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to break, to show weakness. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I wouldn't give anyone the pleasure of seeing me fall apart. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about standing up for what was rightfully mine. The house, the investments, the money I had poured into our family, none of it was going to slip away without a fight. I turned around and walked back to my apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to think. I needed to plan. I sat at my desk, staring at the laptop screen, my fingers frozen above the keys. I had never imagined that this day would come, but now that it had, I had no choice but to act. I began by opening up a folder on my desktop, filled with financial records, emails, receipts. Evidence. Evidence of everything I had done for this family, everything I had contributed to the house we all lived in. The anger that had been bubbling inside me began to shift, slowly morphing into something else. This wasn't just about my mother or my sister anymore. It was about taking control. I had the facts. I had the documents. I had what I needed to make sure I wasn't left with nothing. I began to type the email, my fingers moving faster as the clarity set in. I had been living in a fog for so long, letting my family walk all over me. But no more. This was the start of something new, something bigger than just this betrayal. I was going to fight for what was mine. I was going to fight for myself. After a few moments, I clicked send. The email was off to a lawyer I had quietly been researching, a lawyer who could help me navigate the mess my family had created. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to back down. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a small sense of satisfaction wash over me. I hadn't cried. I hadn't begged. I hadn't called my mother, demanding answers. Instead, I had done something she never expected. I was going to fight. The morning light filtering through the blinds felt distant, like a world I was no longer a part of. My fingers hovered over the keys of my laptop, the soft hum of the morning reminding me that life was moving forward, even though I felt stuck. The text from my mother still burned in my mind. We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. Let's see how brave you are now. I hadn't expected this. Not in a million years. It was one thing for my mother to be distant, to take me for granted, but this? This was a line I couldn't ignore. I took a deep breath, pushing my thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. Not ever again. The world had already taken enough from me, and now it was time to take something back. Slowly, I opened the folders on my desk, financial records, bank statements, emails. Years of my life, neatly packed into these documents, now about to serve as my armor. I began sorting through the papers, meticulously organizing them by date. Mortgage payments, renovation expenses, utility bills, all contributions that no one had acknowledged. It had always been me. The worker, the provider, the one who made sure everything was in place while they took the credit. But not anymore. Not after today. I found myself smiling coldly, the bitterness in my chest mixing with a newfound sense of purpose. The fight ahead wasn't just about money. It wasn't about getting back what they owed me, it was about something much bigger. It was about showing them that I was done being the invisible one, the one who sacrificed without a second thought. I was done playing by their rules. I opened my email and began composing a message. It was time to reach out to the lawyer I had found online, the one who specialized in family disputes. The one who might be able to help me put my family's betrayal to rest. I clicked on the contact information and picked up the phone. Hello, a voice answered on the other end. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke, my voice firm. I need to speak with someone about a legal matter regarding my family's property. The conversation was quick. The lawyer was interested in my case and wanted to set up a meeting. I felt a rush of relief, but there was a lingering sense of uncertainty. What if they didn't believe me? What if all my evidence wasn't enough to prove my worth to the family? It was a risky move, but it was one I had to make. The call ended with a promise to schedule an initial consultation. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and apprehension. I wasn't sure what the next steps would look like, but for the first time in a long while, I was taking control of my own future. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid to face it. Later that week, I spent hours sifting through receipts, emails, and bank statements. Each document felt heavier than the last. I had always known my family relied on me, but now, seeing the paper trail laid out before me, the extent of their manipulation became undeniable. There were payments I had made that were never acknowledged, loans I had given without ever being repaid. Each piece of evidence I uncovered made my blood boil. But the real bombshell came when I found the text from my mother. "We need money to cover an emergency," it read. There was no repayment, no thanks. Just another example of how they had used me for their own benefit, expecting nothing in return. That text would be the keystone of my case. It was proof that my mother had never seen me as anything more than a financial resource. I sat back in my chair, rubbing my temples. The anger inside me was growing, but it was also transforming into something sharper, something more focused. This wasn't just about fighting for what was right. This was about standing up for myself in a way I had never done before. I wasn't going to let my family walk all over me anymore. As the days passed, I grew more methodical in my approach. I gathered everything I could find, emails, bank statements, tax records, and started preparing my case. It was exhausting, but it was also empowering. With each piece of evidence I collected, I felt stronger. I was building something concrete, something that couldn't be ignored. And I knew my family was about to find out just how far I was willing to go. The phone call with the lawyer confirmed what I had already known. My case was moving forward. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me. There was no turning back now. The legal battle had begun, and my family had no idea what was coming. Later that evening, I sat down to a family dinner, the kind we'd had for years. The tension in the air was palpable, though no one else seemed to notice it. Amanda laughed about something trivial, my mother chimed in with her usual remarks, but I could hardly focus on their words. My mind was racing. The last time I had been at this table, I had been the dutiful daughter, the one who kept everything in line. Now, I was the outsider. The one who was about to shake things up. I kept my thoughts to myself, feeling a wave of resentment bubble up. They didn't know. They didn't know what I was planning. And I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack. Instead, I kept my gaze steady, my expressions controlled, and waited for the right moment to strike. After dinner, I returned to my apartment, feeling exhausted but determined. The next step was clear. I was going to take them to court. I wasn't going to let this betrayal slide. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had done enough for them, and now it was time to claim what was mine. The lawyer had called again, confirming that the case had been officially filed. A sense of finality settled over me. This was no longer a fight I was just thinking about. It was real, and I was ready for it. I couldn't turn back now, I muttered to myself as I sat back in my chair, looking at the documents laid out before me. The war had officially started. The morning after my meeting with Maggie, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The weight of the night before, anxiety, anticipation, a touch of fear, still lingered, but it wasn't enough to stop me. I had taken the first step. Now I had to follow through. The sound of the shower running filled the silence of my apartment. The smell of fresh coffee was a small comfort as I brewed my usual cup. But I wasn't thinking about the routine anymore. My thoughts were focused entirely on what I needed to do next. The lawyer's office would be my next destination. A place that might change everything. I dressed quickly, my mind running over the papers I'd organized the night before. Mortgage payments, receipts, email exchanges, every bit of evidence was laid out before me, each piece a step closer to exposing the truth. I arrived at Maggie's office, a small but cozy space in downtown Portland. Maggie greeted me with a firm handshake, her face showing the hint of a smile as she gestured for me to sit. I could feel the weight of the room around me, the tension, the uncertainty, but I pushed it aside. Today wasn't about doubt. It was about moving forward. Maggie was impressed with how much I'd prepared. She sifted through the documents, glancing over them with a practiced eye. "This is solid," she said, looking up at me. "But you should know that this won't be easy. Your family will fight back with everything they have." The words stung, but they weren't unexpected. I had known it wouldn't be simple. I had known that the people I trusted most in the world, my own family, would throw everything at me to keep their secrets hidden. Still, I nodded. "I'm ready," I replied, my voice firm. Maggie paused, her expression softening slightly. "It's going to be a battle. You'll need to stay strong, Cora. And you'll need to be prepared for the emotional cost. This case won't just be about legal victories. It's about how much you're willing to sacrifice to get what's rightfully yours." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat threatening to rise. "I'm ready," I repeated, though this time it was more for myself than for her. I've spent years being the one who holds everything together. It's my turn now. Maggie leaned back in her chair, watching me for a moment before nodding. "Let's get started then." The next few days were a blur. I spent hours at the courthouse, combing through records, tracking payments, and matching receipts to dates. I dug into old files, found contracts, and dug deeper into family records than I'd ever thought possible. Every time I thought I was done, I uncovered something new. Something that made the anger inside me boil over. My family had used me, taken advantage of my good nature and generosity, and now I had the proof to make them pay. But just as I thought I was gaining ground, the first blow landed. A letter arrived from my family's lawyer, Jonathan Green, just a few days after I'd met with Maggie. I stared at the envelope in disbelief before ripping it open. Inside was a counterclaim. My family was officially challenging my legal action. Your financial contributions were gifts, not loans, the letter stated, and as such, you have no legal standing in this case. I stared at the letter, the words blurring in front of my eyes. A sickening feeling rose in my stomach. They were trying to discredit everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed. I called Maggie immediately. Take a deep breath, she said when I explained the situation. This is common in family disputes. They'll try to discredit you. They'll make it seem like you're the one in the wrong. But you have the evidence. Hold on to that. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of the world press down on my chest. I won't back down, I said, my voice shaking with fury. I've given them everything, and they've treated me like I'm nothing. I'm not going to let them take this from me too. Maggie's voice softened. I know you won't. You've got this. Stick with the plan. Trust the evidence. I hung up the phone, feeling both frustrated and oddly reassured. The road ahead had just gotten a lot harder. But it wasn't the first challenge I'd faced. And it wouldn't be the last. I spent the next few days diving deeper into the evidence. The counterclaim from my family only fueled my determination. I spent hours at the courthouse, reviewing records, digging through every last piece of paperwork I could find. And then, I found it. A set of records that showed my financial contributions had helped fund the mortgage. My payments were listed clearly, along with renovations I'd paid for. It was proof that they had relied on me, not as a daughter, but as a financial lifeline. The discovery filled me with a cold satisfaction. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my dignity. But that wasn't the only battle. A few days later, my family invited me to a dinner. It was awkward from the moment I walked in. Amanda, my younger sister, was seated at the head of the table, looking as if nothing had changed. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and uncomfortable. Amanda was the same as always, oblivious to the storm brewing. So, what's this I hear about you suing the family? She asked, casually sipping her wine. Isn't that a bit much, Cora? Mom's just, Mom. I gritted my teeth, feeling the sharp sting of her words. It's not just about Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's about what's right, and I've had enough of being treated like I don't matter. Amanda blinked, her face a mask of confusion. But you're always there for us. You've always helped out. Her words were hollow, as if she truly couldn't see the truth. Or worse, didn't want to. I felt a flash of anger. I've been there for you, yes. But not because I wanted to. Because I was made to feel like I had no choice. The dinner continued in awkward silence. Amanda didn't seem to get it, didn't understand the depth of my frustration. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't fighting for her. I was fighting for me. As the night came to a close, I stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face. I hadn't expected a breakthrough with Amanda. But I wasn't here to convince her, I was here to reclaim my life. When I got into my car, my phone buzzed. It was Maggie. I answered, my heart racing. The case is moving forward, Maggie said. We're filing the next motions, but they've filed a motion to dismiss your claim. My stomach dropped. I had expected this, but hearing it made it real. So what now? I asked, my voice hoarse. We fight back, Maggie replied. This is just the beginning. But now, the stakes are higher than ever. I started the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I won't back down. The fight was far from over, but the stakes were higher than I ever imagined. The days leading up to the hearing felt like a slow-moving storm, gathering force, threatening to break at any moment. I spent most of my time in my small Portland apartment, trying to prepare for the trial. Maggie, my lawyer, had been helpful, but I couldn't shake the frustration of how slow everything was moving. Every step forward felt like it took 10 steps back. My family had been using every trick in the book to drag things out, and the weight of it all was beginning to take its toll on me. The evidence was clear. I had contributed to the house's mortgage, renovations, and bills, but the legal system wasn't designed for people like me. People who spent their entire lives quietly doing the right thing, only to be pushed aside when it mattered most. I spent hours at my kitchen table, flipping through the paperwork, trying to make sense of it all, but the constant setbacks were wearing me thin. I could hear Maggie's voice in my head, reminding me to stay strong, but the weight of my family's betrayal was something that no lawyer's advice could fix. Maggie called me that afternoon with an update. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the undercurrent of tension. Cora, your family's lawyer is playing dirty. They've filed a motion to dismiss, claiming that you have no legal claim to the house. They're calling your contributions gifts, not loans. This is going to be a fight. I leaned against the counter, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to keep my composure. What does that mean? How do we fight this? We fight back, she said, her voice steady. But it's going to take time, and you'll need to be prepared for more underhanded tactics. They'll stop at nothing. I clenched my fists. I wasn't surprised, but that didn't make it any easier to swallow. My family, the people who were supposed to have my back, were trying to steal everything I had worked for. And now, they were pulling out all the stops to make sure I didn't win. I hung up the phone feeling more determined than ever. It was clear that this wasn't just about the house anymore. This was a battle for my dignity, for my right to be seen as something more than a silent worker in their lives. I wasn't going to let them win. A few days later, everything changed. During a deposition, I uncovered something I never could have imagined. It happened so quickly. One of the family's witnesses, an old friend of my father's, was going through some documents when I noticed something that didn't sit right. It was a transfer of equity. Hidden in the paperwork was a document that showed my parents had secretly transferred part of the house's equity to Amanda. The reason? A false pretext, one that had nothing to do with any real need, but with my parents' desire to ensure Amanda's future over mine. My hands shook as I held the document in my hands, unable to believe what I was seeing. My heart pounded in my chest as the full scope of the betrayal hit me. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about how my family had always kept me in the dark. They had made decisions about my life, about my future, without ever consulting me. And all this time, I thought I was just the dependable one, the one who was always there. I felt a swell of anger rise inside me, but it wasn't the kind of anger that made you want to scream. It was colder, sharper. I had been manipulated for so long, but now I had the proof. The secret they'd tried to bury had been uncovered, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I stormed into Maggie's office the next day, my pulse still racing from the shock of what I had discovered. They transferred part of the house to Amanda, I said, slamming the document onto the table in front of her. Under false pretenses. It's all here. Maggie didn't need to see the document twice to know what it meant. Her eyes flickered with concern as she glanced at it. This changes everything, Cora. This isn't just about your claims anymore. This is fraud. I nodded, my chest tight. I'm not just fighting for the house now. I'm fighting to expose everything. The air between us was thick with the weight of the revelation. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore, it was personal. They had lied to me, kept me in the dark, and now they were trying to take away what I had rightfully earned. The next night, I went to my childhood home for a family dinner. I knew it would be awkward, but I didn't expect it to feel like a battleground. As soon as I stepped inside, I could feel the tension. My father, as usual, was sitting in his chair, flipping through a newspaper, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. Amanda was there, too, her eyes bright and oblivious as always. I kept quiet for most of the meal, watching them interact. The conversations were polite, almost too polite. But I couldn't shake the feeling that they were all in on something I wasn't privy to. I had always been the one to make sure everything ran smoothly, to help when things got tough, but they were still acting as if I owed them something. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put down my fork, looked at my father, and said, "You thought you could just take what I helped build and keep me out of it? What else are you hiding from me?" My father barely looked up from his newspaper. "You never asked for anything. You just gave." This was Amanda's future. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. And what about mine? What about all the years I spent working for you? I was done holding back. Amanda looked confused, her brow furrowed in a way that made it clear she had no idea what was going on. "Cora, this is crazy. Why are you making such a big deal about this?" I could feel my anger rising, but I held it in check. "I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing this because I've been pushed aside for too long. And I'm not going to let you take what's mine." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could see my parents' discomfort, but I no longer cared. The realization was sinking in. I was never going to get the approval I craved from them. They had already made up their minds about me. I left the dinner feeling more resolute than ever. This wasn't just about a house or money. It was about me finally standing up for myself, reclaiming what was mine. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Maggie. "They've filed a motion to dismiss," she said, her voice tight. "They're trying to stop you from moving forward with the case. This is going to be harder than we thought." I took a deep breath. I wasn't surprised, but the reality of it hit me hard. "They think they can stop me," I said quietly, gripping the steering wheel. "But I've just begun." The weight of the fight had begun to settle in. It wasn't just the endless legal battles or the mounting pressure from my family that was wearing me down, it was the way everything had started to spill over into my public life. The media, that relentless beast, had picked up on the story. And now, they were painting me as some kind of disgruntled child trying to take what wasn't hers. The first news report I saw made my stomach turn. They twisted the facts, making it sound like I was simply out for money, not fighting for what I had built. The TV anchor's words blurred together as my thoughts raced. Cora Wells, a daughter fighting her own family in a legal battle over a family home. They painted me as ungrateful, as someone who didn't appreciate the sacrifices my family had made for me. I couldn't believe how easily they turned the narrative. It felt like betrayal all over again, but this time it wasn't just my family, it was the world. Comments flooded in, calling me selfish, unstable. The people I had known for years were now questioning my character. It was the kind of public humiliation I had always feared, but now, it didn't matter. Sitting on the couch in my apartment that evening, I couldn't escape the sense of isolation creeping in. My family was fighting me in court, and the media had begun its assault. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. This wasn't just for the house. It was for my life, my future. I threw my phone across the room in frustration. I couldn't let them win. I wouldn't. But the betrayal didn't stop there. A few days later, I learned just how deep the manipulation ran. It happened while I was meeting with Maggie at her office. We had been going over the next steps in the case, reviewing documents, talking strategy when Maggie's assistant knocked on the door with a letter in hand. The moment I saw it, I knew something was wrong. "Cora," Maggie said softly, as she handed me the envelope. "You need to see this." My heart sank as I tore open the letter. It was from Erica, my best friend. A message that would change everything. She had leaked confidential details about the case to the press. The worst part? She had done it under the pretense of protecting me. The shock of the words hit me like a punch to the gut. The betrayal was suffocating. How could she do this to me? Erica had known everything, every detail of my fight. She was the one I confided in when it seemed like the world was closing in. And now, she was the one helping to tear me apart. I immediately called her. "Erica," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "Why? Why would you do this to me?" On the other end of the line, I could hear her hesitation before she spoke. "Cora, I didn't want to see you hurt. You're not strong enough for this. The world isn't kind to people like us." I thought I was helping. I could feel my blood boiling. "You didn't think I could handle it, did you? You betrayed me. You sold me out to the press. You don't get to decide that for me." There was a long pause before Erica replied, her voice quiet. "I was trying to save you, Cora. You're not strong enough to win this." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. Not strong enough? All this time, I had believed she understood. But instead, she had chosen to protect me from the truth, by controlling my narrative. I had thought she was my ally, my one true supporter. But now, I saw her for what she was. Another person trying to manipulate me into submission. "You sold me out, Erica," I whispered, my throat tightening. "You don't get to make that decision for me." She tried to apologize, but her words fell flat. There was nothing she could say to make it right. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. The betrayal stung like nothing else. But I couldn't dwell on it. I had a battle to win. A war had been waged on me, and now, I had to fight back, not just against my family, but against the people I had trusted. The next morning, I met with Maggie at a quiet cafe, determined to move forward despite the emotional storm. She had a plan. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like the weight was starting to lift. "We're going to fight this," Maggie said, her tone steady. "We're filing an injunction to stop your family from selling any assets, and we'll file a motion to revoke the property transfer. We'll hit them where it hurts." I nodded, but a part of me felt empty. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was moving too fast. The emotional toll of losing Erica, of watching my family tear itself apart, was beginning to sink in. But I wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. "I'm in," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Let's do this." That afternoon, I drove to my parents' estate, with Maggie by my side. My nerves were on edge. The confrontation was inevitable. I knew I was walking into enemy territory, but this time, I was prepared. I walked into the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see my father sitting in his usual chair, his feet propped up on the ottoman. My mother was in the kitchen, humming to herself, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. I turned to them, my resolve firm. "You thought I would just bend and accept your decisions, didn't you? Well, I'm not that person anymore. I'm taking you to court." My father chuckled, shaking his head. "You're threatening us? We're family, Cora." I could feel the rage building inside me. "Not anymore," I said, my voice ice cold. "This isn't about family, this is about what's right." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face reddened, her lips pressed tight, as if she were struggling to maintain control. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. As I left the estate, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an anonymous source. Someone who knew my family's next move. They were planning to plant false evidence to destroy my case. I stopped in my tracks, staring at the screen. This wasn't just about money or family anymore. This was about survival. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. They thought they could outsmart me. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. I was playing my own. I woke up to a silence that felt too heavy. The weight of the legal battle, the media attacks, and the endless tension had finally taken its toll. Alone in my apartment, I found myself staring at the walls, unsure of what to do next. The phone calls, the meetings with my lawyer, all of it seemed to blur together in a haze. Despite the legal support, despite the strategy, I was alone in this. Alone, and surrounded by people I once trusted, who had now turned against me. My best friend Erica, the person who had known every detail of my plan, had betrayed me. She'd sold me out to the press, claiming she was only trying to protect me. But I knew better now. The betrayal stung more deeply than I could have anticipated. The media painted me as the villain, the child trying to take everything from her parents. They twisted the truth into something ugly. I checked my phone again, hoping to see a message of support. But instead, there were more hostile comments, more twisted versions of the story. It felt suffocating. The press had turned their claws on me, and there was no escape. But as the despair set in, I realized something. I could still fight back. I hadn't come this far to stop now. This was about more than just a house, it was about my dignity, my right to be seen, to be heard. I grabbed the legal files Maggie had sent over and began skimming through the documents, my eyes darting over the lines, my mind racing. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden realization. I had no more time to waste. I had to keep pushing forward. There was no going back. Then, something shifted. As I dug deeper into my father's old belongings, I found something I hadn't expected, a small, encrypted file hidden away in a drawer. At first, I didn't know what it was. But curiosity got the better of me. I connected the device to my laptop and began decrypting the file. What I uncovered stopped me cold. There it was. A financial transaction, one that my mother had kept hidden from everyone, including me. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, evidence of a fraudulent transfer of equity in the house, a deal that no one knew about. It implicated my mother directly in illegal activity. I sat there, staring at the screen. The enormity of it hit me all at once. This could be the turning point in the case. The evidence I had uncovered was a game changer, one that could expose everything. But as I sat there, I felt a pang of hesitation. What would it mean to destroy my family like this? The guilt washed over me in waves. I had always been taught to protect them, to keep the peace. But this wasn't peace, it was a lie. A lie I could no longer accept. I called Maggie immediately. Maggie, I found something, I said, my voice tight with emotion. A document that could turn this whole case around. But I'm not sure what to do with it. Maggie was silent for a moment. You're sure it's legitimate? It's not just legitimate, I replied, my voice cracking. It's everything. It's proof that my mother's been lying, manipulating, and hiding everything. This could bring her empire down. But it'll destroy everything, Maggie. My family. My relationship with them. Do I really want to go that far? You have to think about this carefully, Cora, Maggie said. This isn't just about winning your case. It's about what kind of person you want to be after all of this. If you release this, it's not just your mother's empire that crumbles. It's everything. You need to be prepared for that. I sat there, the weight of Maggie's words pressing down on me. I had no illusions anymore. I knew what this would cost me. But I also knew that the truth had to come out. No matter the consequences. I didn't hesitate any longer. I was going to take the fight to them. I called my mother. It was time for a final confrontation. Arriving at the family estate, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The air was thick with tension. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't scared anymore. I was prepared. I was ready. This time, I wouldn't be silenced. I walked into the house and found my mother in the sitting room, her usual calm demeanor masking the storm that was about to hit. You've spent my whole life making me believe that I was the problem, I said, my voice steady. But you're the one who's been lying, manipulating everything from the start. You don't get to do that anymore. My mother's eyes widened in shock, but she quickly recovered. You think you can bring me down with this? She sneered. You're still my child, Cora, and you've always been weak. I stepped closer to her, feeling my rage simmer beneath the surface. I'm not weak anymore, I said, my voice unwavering. I've seen through your lies. Her face twisted in anger, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the power now, the evidence to back it up. I laid it all out for her, watching as the walls she had carefully built around herself began to crumble. As I left the estate, I felt a strange sense of victory. I had exposed the truth, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. But just as I was walking away, my phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Cora, a cold voice said. You've made a mistake. If you think this is over, you're wrong. My heart sank. I'd uncovered the truth, but someone was still watching. Someone was still pulling the strings behind the scenes. The battle was far from over. I thought I had control. But they've always been 2 steps ahead. And now, they've just tipped their hand. I sat across from Maggie, the weight of the world pressing down on me. The evidence I had uncovered, the devastating truth about my mother, lay in front of us. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew was crumbling beneath me. Maggie glanced at the papers and then back at me, her face unreadable. You understand this could break the whole system, right? She asked. This is bigger than just you and your mom. We're talking about corporate giants. I nodded, the implications sinking in like a stone in my stomach. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, I admitted. But I can't back down now. Not after everything. Maggie didn't reply right away. She didn't need to. The fear in my chest was enough to know how deep this hole went, how far-reaching this conspiracy really was. As I walked out of the office, the world felt different. I wasn't just fighting my family anymore. I was up against something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. And the stakes had never been higher. The world I had once known, the people I'd trusted, had all been built on lies. And now, the truth was out there, raw and dangerous. Later that evening, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying the evidence over and over in my head. The encrypted file I'd found in my father's belongings had revealed something far darker than I expected. A financial transaction that tied my mother to powerful figures in the corporate world. But it didn't stop there. My mother hadn't just hidden money. She had used me, my inheritance, as a pawn in a much larger game. I found an email thread that sent chills down my spine. My mother had sold my inheritance to settle debts, using me as leverage without my knowledge. It wasn't just about money, it was about control. She had sacrificed me to protect herself, and for what? To climb higher in a system that was already feeding off the vulnerable? The realization hit me like a freight train. For years, I had believed I was the problem. That I was somehow weak for not being able to fit into the life my family had crafted. But the truth was, they were the ones who had betrayed me. They had been lying to me all along. My mother had played the long game, using me as her pawn in a battle I never even knew I was in. I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. I had to confront her. It wasn't enough to just expose the truth. I needed her to look me in the eyes and understand that I knew. That I wasn't afraid anymore. I drove to the family estate, my heart pounding with every mile. When I arrived, the house seemed to loom over me, its grandeur mocking the person I had become. But this time, I wasn't the scared daughter walking into a lion's den. I was the lion. I found her in the living room, her back to me, as if nothing had changed. The woman who had destroyed everything I'd worked for, who had sold my future without a second thought. "You sold me," I said, my voice steady but laced with fury. "All this time, I've been trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. And it was you. You betrayed me in the worst way possible." She turned to face me, her expression cold, like she was expecting this moment. "You've always been weak, Cora," she said, her voice cutting through the air. "I did what I had to do to survive. You should have understood that by now." "No, you don't get it," I shot back, stepping closer. "I was your daughter. I loved you. And you used me. You used everything I've ever done for you, for your own gain. And now, you want to stand there and pretend like I'm the one in the wrong?" Her face didn't change. She was unmoved, indifferent to the destruction she had caused. That indifference, more than anything, was what broke me. "I didn't ask for this," I whispered, more to myself than to her. But it didn't matter. She didn't care. I stormed out of the house, my emotions a chaotic mess, each step feeling heavier than the last. The anger that had been building inside me was now consuming me. But there was no turning back. I had made my decision, and I was going to see it through. I needed a moment to breathe. I needed to think, to clear my head. So, I took a walk through the park. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the path as I walked in a daze. The weight of everything I had learned, everything I had lost, was almost too much to bear. But I couldn't stop now. I had come too far. I stopped for a moment, leaning against a tree as the realization hit me once again. This wasn't just about getting back at my mother. This was about me, my future, and the price of truth. If I wanted justice, I would have to fight for it, no matter the cost. No matter who I had to destroy to get it. But as I stood there, lost in thought, my phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Cora," a cold, unfamiliar voice said. "It's not over yet. You don't even know who's really pulling the strings." My heart sank. Who else could be involved in this? And just as the fear began to creep in, I noticed something, a figure in the distance, standing in the shadows, watching me. My pulse quickened. I didn't know who it was, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't alone in this fight. I turned, but when I looked back, the figure was gone. I thought the worst was behind me. But in this twisted game, I've only scratched the surface. Who else has been playing me all along? The house felt colder than usual, the air thick with the weight of impending decisions. I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by piles of documents, bank records, and the evidence that I had painstakingly gathered over the past months. The truth was almost within my grasp, but the reality of what I was about to do still sent shivers down my spine. I was holding the power to shatter everything my mother had built, to take down the empire she'd constructed at my expense. I could feel the weight of it pressing on me like a stone on my chest. I dialed Maggie's number, the familiar ringing tone filling the silence of the room. When she picked up, her voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tension in it. "Are you ready?" she asked, knowing that this moment would change everything. I glanced down at the documents before me, the truth reflected in every word. "This ends tonight," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "The power of all those people who've controlled me, it's time to break it." Maggie was silent for a beat before responding, her voice cautious. "Are you ready for the fallout? This will change everything. Your mother won't go down without a fight." I didn't hesitate. "I'm ready. It has to be done." The line went quiet for a moment, both of us absorbing the gravity of what was about to happen. My mother's empire, her web of lies, was about to collapse, and I knew there would be no going back. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The fear I had carried for years was gone. Now, it was just a matter of whether I could live with the consequences. The next day, just when I thought I had control of the situation, everything was thrown into chaos. The phone call came when I least expected it. It was Richard, an old family friend. His voice on the other end was too calm, too rehearsed. "Cora, I think it's time you know the full story," he said, his tone unsettling. "Everything you think you know about your mother's financial dealings, it's a setup. You've been played, Cora. And the worst part is, I've been behind it all." My blood ran cold. "What the hell are you talking about?" Richard's laugh on the other end was devoid of warmth. "You think you're the only one who's been manipulated? I was using you to bring your mother down. All of this, your discoveries, your rage, it's exactly what I wanted. You're not the victim here, Cora. You're part of the plan." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Richard, the man I had once trusted, the man who had been a mentor to me, had been orchestrating everything from the start. He'd used me as a pawn in a game I didn't even know existed. He'd been working with my mother all along, playing both sides to his advantage. You've been using me all along? This was your game?" I choked out, the betrayal coursing through my veins like poison. Richard's voice was colder than ever. "It's always been about control, Cora. I thought you'd figured that out by now. You're not a victim, you're part of the plan. And now, you can join me. Together, we could control everything." I couldn't believe it. Richard, the man who had pretended to care for me, had been using me as a tool in his larger scheme. But I wasn't his pawn anymore. I wasn't anyone's pawn. "I'm not your pawn," I spat, every ounce of anger rising to the surface. "You've underestimated me, Richard. I won't play your game." He didn't seem surprised. In fact, he seemed almost bored by my response. "We'll see, Cora. You're already in too deep. You can't back out now. You've made your choices." I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling. I had been played, not just by my mother, but by the one person I trusted the most. Richard had been the puppet master all along. The man who had always been a guiding figure in my life had turned out to be the one pulling the strings, manipulating me for his own gain. I had to act, and I had to act fast. There was no time to waste. I gathered the documents, everything I had accumulated, and made my way to a high-rise corporate building downtown, where the final confrontation would unfold. I met with a journalist who had been investigating my family's dealings, and together, we devised a plan. I would release everything, the documents, the emails, the recordings, into the public eye. It was time to expose the truth, no matter the consequences. As the media storm unfolded, I watched from the sidelines, my heart pounding in my chest. It was working. My mother's empire was beginning to crumble. But as I saw the first waves of destruction hit, I couldn't shake the emptiness inside. Yes, I had won, but at what cost? "Cora," the journalist said, his voice full of admiration. "You're not just a victim here. You're the hero of this story." Maybe. But as the camera flashed, and the world turned its eyes toward my family's fall from grace, I couldn't help but wonder if the price of victory was ever truly worth it. I had won, but the emptiness lingered. The scars would remain. As I left the building, feeling the weight of the world lifting from my shoulders, my phone buzzed again. I looked down. An anonymous message. "You think you've won? You've only scratched the surface. The real game is just beginning." My heart stopped. I looked around, instinctively searching for the source of the threat, but there was no one in sight. Still, I knew. The war wasn't over. I had taken down one enemy, but the real battle was just starting. I walked into the night, my face hardening with determination. Whatever came next, I was ready. The game had changed, and this time, I was the one who was in control. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds of my apartment. The city was quieter than usual, its hum distant and unfamiliar. I sat at my kitchen table, staring out at the skyline. My hands were cold, but my mind was even colder. The battle was over, but the price was more than I ever imagined. I had torn down the empire my mother built, unraveled the web of lies that had controlled me for so long. The people who had been involved in the conspiracy were either behind bars or on the run, their secrets now out in the open. But what did that leave me with? Victory? Or a hollow shell of what I thought was worth fighting for? As I turned over the bank records in front of me, I realized just how much had been lost. Not just the empire, but the family I had once longed to reclaim. I didn't just lose my mother's approval, I lost the idealized version of what I thought family should be. I could almost hear the voices of the people I used to trust, the promises they made, the lies they told. It was all a game to them. A game that I had finally walked away from. But the victory felt cold. I thought about the destruction, the relationships shattered. The weight of it all pressed on my chest. Was it worth it? I couldn't be sure. I'd won, but what had I really gained? What now? I whispered to myself, the emptiness echoing in the quiet room. Is this what I really wanted? The phone buzzed on the table beside me, dragging me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered it hesitantly, unsure what kind of call it might be. Cora, it's me, your Aunt Linda. The voice on the other end was calm, measured, but there was something in it that pulled me in. My aunt had been missing for years, disappearing from the family as suddenly as she'd arrived. She was once part of the business but had stepped away after some scandal years ago. I had no idea where she'd been, what had happened to her, or why she was calling me now. I've been watching, she continued. I've been watching everything unfold. And I think it's time we talked. I could feel the skepticism creeping up inside me. My family had turned on me. So many people I had trusted were no more than figures in a game of manipulation. Why would I trust her now? I don't know if I'm ready for this, I said, feeling the edge of doubt settle in my voice. Linda's tone softened. You've lost a lot, Cora. But I can help you. You don't have to keep fighting this alone. The ones you trusted, they betrayed both of us. But now, you can rebuild. Not with their money or power, but with real connections. I listened, my mind racing. This was the last thing I expected, a voice from the past offering a way forward. The weight of everything I had fought for suddenly felt less heavy. There was something in her voice that made me pause, something I hadn't heard in years, sincerity. I've never needed their empire, I muttered under my breath. I needed my family, but it's too late for that. Her response was gentle, almost knowing. It's never too late. You'll see. Let me show you. I didn't know if I could trust her, but I needed something, anything, to believe in at this point. So I agreed. We set a time to meet. A week later, we met in a quiet cafe. The conversation wasn't easy. It never is when you face the wreckage of everything you've believed in for so long. But Linda listened, and with each word she spoke, something in me started to change. She wasn't offering to fix everything. She wasn't offering me riches or power. What she offered was far simpler, a chance to rebuild my life, from the ground up, not with money, but with truth. There are people you can trust, she said. There's still a chance for you to find peace. This time, it's not about what you destroy. It's about what you build. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. There was so much I wanted to say, but instead, I just nodded. Maybe she was right. I don't know what comes next, I told her, my voice quiet. But I can't go back. I'm ready to move forward. Just one step at a time. She smiled then, a sad but knowing smile. You've always been stronger than you think, Cora. You're not the victim here. You never were. You just needed to realize that you've been in control all along. The words settled into me like a balm, soothing old wounds I had forgotten existed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt lighter. I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. After that meeting, I spent the next few weeks reflecting. The anger that had consumed me for so long began to fade. I still had a long way to go, but I could see the path ahead of me now. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about healing. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at a small cafe, a journal in front of me. I'd spent hours writing, reflecting on everything I'd learned, about my family, about myself. The past wasn't gone, and it would never fully be. But I had come to terms with it. I closed the journal and looked out the window at my reflection. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But I had finally found peace. I'm no longer afraid of what they'll think, I whispered to myself. I've decided who I am. I wasn't afraid anymore. As I stepped out of the cafe, ready to embrace the future, I saw a familiar figure across the street. My heart stopped. There, just on the other side of the street, was someone from my past. Someone who could change everything again. They looked at me, their gaze lingering. But neither of us moved. The figure disappeared into the crowd. For a moment, I wasn't sure if they were real or if my mind had just conjured them up. But even as I walked away, a lingering feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The past had a way of finding me, no matter how far I ran. The future was mine to shape, I thought, but as I walked into the night, I knew the past had left a mark that wouldn't fade easily.